born in Jamaica, and now shining on one of volleyball's biggest stages. Aiko Jones is more than an all-star. She's a trailblazer, role model, and one of the faces helping to grow the game beyond the court. We sat down with the Atlanta Vibe standout to talk about her journey, her impact, and what's next. This is the story of Aiko Jones.
Hi, everybody. It's KB from KB Sports Media and KBSN. And I'm here with one of two all-stars from the Atlanta Vibe. How are you, Aiko?
I'm doing well. Happy to be here.
Good. I want to talk to you, not just about this season, but I want to go and talk about how you got here. And most people don't know you are the first Jamaican-born player in Major League Volleyball. Talk to me about what that journey was for you to go from Jamaica here to the States.
It's been a crazy journey. I started playing volleyball because both my parents played in Jamaica. They both represented the national team in some capacity. My mom played, my dad coached. And so I was just always around the sport. They would host their own volleyball tournaments in the summers. Oh. And so I worked them. I was a line judge. I was a ball girl. I was at the scorer's table. And so I just always grew up around the sport. Both my parents also cautioned all of us. I have 3 siblings. They said, you do not have to play this sport because we play it. And I just could not stay away. So I grew up around the sport, fell in love with it, and I started playing when I was 11 in high school. And the rest is history. I realized that I was kind of maybe good, and I wanted to see if I could play volleyball in college and get volleyball to pay for my schooling. And then through college, I was like, well, maybe we can go further. My coaches encouraged me, and now we're here. And so upon signing, I realized that there was no other Jamaican in the league. And I say Jamaican-born specifically because the Jamaican diaspora is huge. And I'm sure there's someone in the league with a little bit of Jamaican in them. And so I don't want to take that away from anyone. But it's an insane just fact that I can say that. And I represent an entire country of very talented athletes and good people. And I try to do that well.
We all know about Jamaica's known for sprinting. How do you plan to make Jamaica also known for volleyball? Yeah,
I hope that I do that every day with not just how I play and if I'm on the court, but with how I show up and my energy and just the kind of person that I am, because I'm not who I am without growing up in Jamaica. And the biggest thing for me, it's less about helping Jamaica be known for volleyball and more about helping volleyball be known in Jamaica, helping to grow the sport there. And one of my goals, as soon as I can feel a little more settled with just my life and my situation, is to start going back to Jamaica and hosting volleyball clinics, maybe donating balls and equipment, because we're very short for equipment compared to clubs and schools in the US. And so I just want to help grow the sport in Jamaica. And when we do that, because we already have very just naturally talented athletes, once we can foster that growth there, we'll have more high-level volleyball players coming out of Jamaica, but it starts from the roots. And so that's where I hope to spend some time.
And I think you're doing a good job so far. I think so. You talked about resources and wanting to provide more resources. What is also the biggest difference that you see from kids that play here in the States and those that play in Jamaica outside of the resources?
The biggest difference, I don't know if it's in the kids, because like I said, we have talented athletes. Jamaicans are known to be hard workers, even though a lot of people think we're really laid back. And both things can be true. I think it's separate from the resources. We play outside. We play a different game. It's less. We spend less time on the floor because I grew up playing on asphalt or on grass once a year, and in some places it's concreted. It's indoors with a low roof, and so you have to play the game differently. And I don't think anything really sets us apart other than the fact that we have a different pipeline and we have less resources, and we'll get there to the best that we can as a country. But I think if Jamaicans had the same training and just access that Americans had, I'm not going to say we'd be better, but we'd give you guys a run for your money.
A little bit of competition.
Yeah, for sure.
I love to hear that. So you said you came here, you played at Louisville. How was your college experience?
People always ask if I could go back and do anything differently, if I would, and I would. Louisville, the decision to go to Louisville, the decision to redshirt at Louisville, and the decision to stay there for all 6 years, those 3 decisions were some of the best decisions I've made in my life, and I would do it the same all over again. I had coaches who, before I even set foot on campus, came to Jamaica to learn about who I was, learn about my family, learn about just what volleyball in Jamaica was like so they could understand me better. And then I got to the US and they poured into me so much. I redshirted my first year, and they just explained, look, like, we know you're athletic, but we think that taking this year to train will benefit you in that extra year. And they bought into me, so I bought into them, and we put in a lot of work. In season, the off season, I was fortunate enough to travel, even though I was redshirting. So I traveled, I dressed, I warmed up for the games. I just never set foot in a game. And there were many games where they told me to warm up because they thought that I was gonna go in and maybe I could help the team win. And in those moments, I really wanted to go in because I really wanted to play. But at the end of the season, I was really happy that they saved my red shirt, because my fourth year even, I think my fourth year was maybe my best year in college. And apart from being on the court, the people at Louisville, they recruit great people before they recruit athletes and the support staff. It was just, again, every year at Louisville just shaped me into the person I am today. And I'm still growing and I'm still learning, but it was the best years of my life.
You said they came to the Jamaica to recruit you. How was the recruiting process for you? Of course, they had to realize, hey, she's in a whole different country. You had to have something for them to look outside the States. How was that whole recruiting process for you and your family?
For sure. College scouts come to Jamaica to watch track and field and
Yes.
maybe to watch soccer. And so for me, my recruiting process started with a bunch of emails. I needed to give them a reason to want to consider this girl from this random not volleyball country. And so I sent a lot of emails, I sent a lot of film. Luckily, somewhere in the Jamaican diaspora, there was this person who played with my mom, who was in the US, who was coaching somewhere. And so there were a couple connections that kind of got me on people's desks, I'll say. But I sent a lot of emails. My dad ran track at Nebraska. And so we knew I needed to get to a volleyball camp somewhere. At the time, Nebraska was the top team in the country, which is a crazy just association in my story. But we knew we could go to a Nebraska volleyball camp and stay for free because we had people we could stay with.
Right.
So I went to a Nebraska volleyball camp. Danny Busum-Kelly was the assistant coach there at the time and the recruiting coordinator. And I was leaps and bounds less technically sound than every single player in that gym. But because of my age, I ended up being with the recruits because I was maybe 16, 17 at the time. And by that time, everyone was already committed to where they were going. So I ended up being with the recruits. John Cook, paid some attention to me. Danny, some way, somehow saw something in me, and I learned a lot that camp. But what I really learned was how far behind I was on the court, but also in recruiting. But it was great. It was a great time, and that kind of established communication between me and Nebraska, between me and Danny. She was a recruiting coordinator. Came back to Jamaica just to realize I have put in a lot of work. And then within that year following the camp, Danny had been the head coach, been hired as the head coach at Louisville. She emailed me, she was like, hey, I'm not in Nebraska anymore, but I think you'd really like Louisville. I was like, where the heck is Louisville? And so I love Danny, and she kept in touch with me, always initiated emails and asked for more film. And so I was like, well, I'm gonna keep my options open. So the following year I went to a Louisville camp, and I just loved the people. Louisville is a big city with a small town feel. And Jamaica is a big country, but everyone knows everyone. And so it kind of reminded me of that. And again, Danny, I would follow that woman anywhere. So it just was a great experience at Louisville, and she just maintained this interest in me. Went to Nebraska camp, flew from Louisville to Nebraska to go to a Nebraska camp. And can I go off on a little tangent because I have a story?
This is your interview, please.
Okay, so I flew from Louisville to Nebraska to go to another Nebraska camp. And after I returned to Jamaica in this month, I had to decide which school. This is 2017. And so I'm at Nebraska camp. My dad and I make a trip to the Omaha Zoo. We get on the little train that takes you around the zoo. I've told this story so many times, but it's my favorite story. And the train ahead of us on the cycle had broken down. So we get stuck behind this train, waiting on them to fix that train so that train can go so we can go. So we're just sitting there, and my mom's an avid bird watcher. So I grew up kind of going to the park with her and just watching birds, taking pictures. And we're in this train, and there's one bird in this tree that's just chirping, high-pitched, kind of like chirp. And I was just like, I just need to know what it is. It's so annoying. So I look up, and again, one bird in the tree, it was a cardinal.
I knew it!
And so here I was just like in the middle of this really, really hard decision. I could go to the top school in the country where I'd probably sit the bench, or I could go to this school that has just hired a new coach and is in this rebuilding process and has a history of success, also just in a different way than Nebraska did. And then there's this cardinal in the tree. And I'm not going to say that's why I made my decision, but I do think it was just a really, really cool sign or just occurrence that, and then years later I find out the significance of cardinals in people's lives and their loved ones and all this stuff. But yeah, and I went back to Jamaica and I chose Louisville, and yeah, it was just, I even forget the question you asked, but the recruiting process. It was, I sent emails and then Danny really just bought in. And I tell her she took a chance on me because statistically, factually, she did, but she would never put it that way. She was just like, it was a no-brainer, which to me just says a lot about the person that she is.
But it also says a lot about you, because I think a lot of times we think it's just about the analytics and the numbers, but sometimes it's about the relationship. Not just the fact that you're like, I love Danny and I'm gonna follow her. She said, I like this young girl from Jamaica and I want her here as well. So it says a lot about that relationship building that I think a lot of high school kids don't think about now. And so where were you in the NIL world?
Listen, I have such unpopular opinions on all of this.
How do you feel about it?
Even before I started college, so I enrolled in college in 2018. And even before then, people were saying, athletes need to get paid, athletes need to get paid. And here I was just like, I'm trying to get my school paid for. Like, that's enough payment.
Yeah.
And then I get to college and there are people on my team that aren't on scholarship, fine. We have free access to athletic training, free access to chiropractors, to dietitians, to tutoring, transportation. There's housing aid. There's so much that is required for universities to provide for us as athletes that now I'm outside of college, I know firsthand, but that I knew cost so much money. And to me, that was enough. So I've always believed that. I do believe that in some ways, in some situations and at some institutions, athletes are exploited for how good they are. And I do think that a lot of the money that schools make can be put to different, I'm not gonna say better use, but different use. But without being too problematic, I have always believed that athletes have gotten paid, we've just never gotten money in our bank accounts. And I think it's just something that I've always been grateful for, and I was in school to go to school. I have to stop because it's gonna get controversial, but I think NIL is different than paying athletes, because I do believe, I think early on, like we had the girls who would just love this one restaurant. And there would be times where the restaurants or the brands would offer like, hey, we'll give you free food if you post. And the rules were no. Essentially, the rules communicated that you belong to us and you cannot do anything with your own image and likeness. And I fully understand that we want athletes to be athletes and to be students, and we don't want to get just stuff just because. But I do believe that NIL is a great avenue for, especially for athletes who aren't on scholarship, to earn a living based on the work that they put in. And so I do believe that NIL is amazing. When NIL passed is 2021, because there were talks of it in 2020. I was 18, 19, 20. I was a true senior, I was a redshirt junior, but I was also an international student athlete. And so the NCAA said, yep, you all can make money based on your name, image, and likeness. And the federal government, the federal laws prohibit international students from making money from anyone other than their institution. And so NIL passed, but not for us. So that was kind of a bummer, but there's so much I could talk about. But I do believe NIL is an amazing opportunity. Now, revenue sharing is a whole different story that we're not going to get into.
Yeah, it's a whole, Mike Krzyzewski talked about it, but not a lot too. Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. I do think that athletes should be able to benefit from the same image that's benefiting the universities. And I do believe that there need to be regulations in place, and right now maybe there need to be more and more specific regulations, but I think in due time we'll figure it out. It's just so new and so early, and every time something's passed there's another loophole, and that's just how these things work.
That's how it works.
But it's pretty cool.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, especially from an athlete at a top university. Come on now, you were a top athlete at a top university?
Yeah, look.
So humble you are. I want to talk about the job search. I was reading on your website that you talked about the job search. You had finished your master's degree communications.
Yes.
Congratulations
Thank
for that. And you were like, okay, what's next? Talk to me about how that journey was, trying to find a job and saying, hey, do I want to go on to play professional volleyball? What was that journey for you?
It was terrible. And what happened was I knew I wanted to play pro. Because I was an international student athlete, I could not, what's the rule? And maybe it's changed. I had to be enrolled in at least 50% in-person classes. So there was no way for me to go play pro and be enrolled in school and maintain my student visa. I'd also just gotten married. And so I was going to be in a green card process very soon. So I could not apply for a professional athlete visa because both those things contradict in the eyes of the government. So my situation was very specific. But I finished playing in December 2023 and I wasn't going to finish my degree until May 2024. I think that's right. And so that whole spring, I couldn't play. And so I had a whole summer after I graduated where I would have no money. That's obviously a dilemma. But like you said, I just graduated with my master's degree. I had real experience working for a full-service student marketing agency in Louisville. I have a bachelor's degree in communication and another in biology, and I had really good letters of recommendation, and I thought an outstanding resume. But what I've learned is the job market is terrible. And I applied to over 50 jobs online, different Indeed, LinkedIn, company websites, all this stuff, Workday, all that stuff. I got 2 interviews, one of which stood me up. I didn't even get onto the Zoom call. And the other turned out to be a multi-level marketing scheme. And so we're 2 months into the summer, and what I did was I printed out my resume and I drove around Columbus. And I walked into a medical office, handed in my resume, and then I walked in somewhere else. I walked into a Wendy's and asked I gave them my resume and asked them if their manager would give me a call. And then I walked into a Lifetime Fitness. And I was like, this would be cool because then I could work out. Yes. Hopefully I get a discounted membership and this could help me because I have to report to a training camp in December. And I walked into Lifetime and I was just like, hey, I just really need a job for the next couple of months and I will clean your toilets and change your light bulbs. And they gave me the link to the application and they hired me and I was on the fac ops team and I cleaned the toilets and changed the light bulbs and that was my job and did other things. But I just needed a job. And so it was cool. And then I found out what Lifetime, I'd never heard of Lifetime before, but it's a lifestyle club.
It's big, yeah.
Girl, then it was like, oh, there's a sauna for free and your membership is free. And then if you go to this other location, there's pickleball and there's a pool. And I was oh my God. And I literally was just driving around Columbus, looking at places close to where my wife lives, trying to get a job. But that was rough because I don't think I was overqualified, but I knew I was qualified for more than half of the jobs that I applied for. And it was just not even an email, some of them I still haven't just even heard we respectfully decline your application. And that was just a crazy experience because people always say the real world is tough. But boy, oh boy, I mean, what if I didn't show up to the gym? What if I just kept applying? I mean, it was just crazy.
Yeah, you talked about how grateful you were for Lifetime Fitness. I read that as well. What did that do for you?
They were that team. So I worked at Lifetime in Upper Arlington in Ohio, so basically Columbus, on West Henderson Road. And not only did they take me in so quickly and just show me the ropes, they made sure I did my workouts. So I had a workout every day, and one of the things that I struggle with as an athlete is discipline. So if I have the motivation, I'm great. If I don't have the motivation and I'm by myself, it's really hard for me to do my workout. And I learned that very quickly being away from Louisville because I had a cardio workout and I was on the spin bike by myself and my teammates weren't yelling at me to push through the last minute. And there were workouts I didn't finish because I know that about myself now and my mentality, but I struggle with discipline. And so I would try to get to work super early and work out before because after my shift, I did not want to do anything. And there were times where it didn't work out. And before I walked out that door, if it wasn't the front desk, if it wasn't my direct boss, if it wasn't the general manager of the branch, but someone was asking me if I did my workout that day. And if I said no, they'd be like, okay, so are you going to? Or they sometimes they gave me grace, but just in that aspect alone, they just helped me remember my goals and stay on track as best I can, and I can never repay them for that. But other than that, it was just a super fun environment. I learned a lot about personal training. I learned that maybe I want to do that. That would be cool, just on the side. I learned a lot about gym equipment. I learned a lot about hospitality. They're huge. Lifetime is huge on that member experience. And then I just met some really cool people, and it was cool. I did Pilates for the first time there. That was an experience. And I just quickly grew. They valued my input too. I'd only been there 4 months, and I remember halfway through my time, the general manager brought me to his office and just asked, like, you've played on high level teams. Like, what are some things we can do better? And I'd never been in that position to be advising or giving advice to my boss. I mean, we have coaches that we kind of give feedback to, but that was different also. And so it was, I mean, I would work there again. It just probably won't work out with where I hope I will be in the next couple years, right? But they took me in so quickly, taught me a lot, and then they just kept me on track. And then when I was leaving, at no point did they make me feel bad for leaving. They actually threatened me if I tried to stay. Oh. And so it was just cool to be a part of something so special in such a short time.
Yeah. And now you're here, and the first year, sat on the bench a little bit, but this year is your breakout year. Yeah. And I've had the opportunity to watch you this entire year, watch you evolve and be in the pressers, and not just as a player, but as a young woman growing. I just want you to sum up as best as you can what this breakout year with the Vibe has been for you.
If I had to pick one word, I'd say it was special. We had a really good team this year, and I don't mean on the court, I just mean support-wise, people-wise, off-the-court-wise, at the club-wise, at dinner-wise, in the apartment. Like, it was just such a special group. And this year was great. Like you said, there were a lot of things that happened for me this year and things that I was able to achieve that are just stepping stones in my journey, but that were really, really cool. And I never really thought a lot of those things would happen. And I owe it to the coaching staff, but I owe it even more to this group that we had. We started out the season and I had zero confidence. And I remember sitting in front of the coaches and telling them I have zero confidence. I remember telling Raven, my roommate, and Corey, I was like, guys, I have never felt this way, ever. And that was after coming into training camp feeling the most confident that I've ever felt. And mental health is important, don't you forget, but...
Mental health month.
Yeah, yeah, perfect, yeah. But it was them who, obviously your friends are like, no, you're so good, blah, 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 but they were in it with me in a sense that we sat down and we talked about the things I don't feel confident about. And over the course of January and half of February, we were like, okay, well, what are we gonna do about it? And Raven gave me some blocking recommendations that I went in and tried and practiced. And I was like, okay, this might work. And then me and Corey, we talked and we were like, okay, we're gonna go in early and we're gonna hit off the box and we're gonna just feel what this is supposed to feel like, and hopefully it comes easier in the game. And it was those moments, it was those late nights on the couch where we were arguing and crying, and if our couches could speak, man, there would be so much let out into the world. But it was those moments that really helped me get out of that rut. And then on the court, again, it's the people. They're telling me to take the big swing with the triple block in front of me, and so I know they're gonna try and cover me. They're telling me, hey, they're really deep on your line, so if you do this, this, and this. And they just the growth that I was able to undergo with this team is just unmatched, and I owe it to them. And yes, like I said, the coaches, but I really owe it to this team, and they made it fun.
And speaking of fun, you had a chance to go to the All-Star weekend. You were voted on as an All-Star.
Yeah, still crazy.
What was the feeling when you got the call or the email that you were selected, and how was that weekend for you?
It was really fun. I didn't get a call or an email. Kayla texted me and Leah before one of our games and was like, I need to talk to you guys, come out to the couches. And I was shaking in my boots. I actually came out there in like a tank top and my slides, and then I had seen Lizzie with the camera, and I said, do I need to change? Like, what is going on? But she sat us down and she just told us, look, you guys have been selected as All-Stars, and it's nothing that we didn't already see in you, which was cool. But my feeling leading up to the actual All-Star game was just disbelief. If you asked me if I was going to All-Star, no, my wife was in Atlanta that week, and in January, I told her, I was like, you picked a terrible week. Hopefully I'm not there. Hopefully I'm at All-Star. And then obviously I went through that rut without confidence. And I texted her and I was like, good news is I think I'm going to be in Atlanta that week. And then Kayla said this and I was like, well, I'm not going to be in Atlanta that week. And so I didn't see it coming at all. For me, it's never about that kind of stuff. Or I've been in games where I do the post-game presser and Brennan's like, oh, 20 kills. I'm like, what?
Yeah, he
like,
did that a lot. And you were like, what?
I barely even know the score of the game. I'm just like, okay, what can I do better than I did last time? What can I do better than I did last rep? What's going to be the best decision? And I've worked really hard to get this way, but I'm very present moment. Games have ended and I've come into the huddle and talked about the next point because I have no idea what the score is. And so it's never occurred to me like, oh yeah, All-Star, blah, blah, blah. Like I was just so in it, so laser focused. And I honestly had thought my chances of making All-Star were gone. And so I was just in disbelief. And it was one of the most fun weekends of the season. Everyone was just so fun. And it was just, yes, we were there to put on a show, but for us, we were just there to have fun. It was like, no matter who plays, I actually had a terrible game. I think I had 1 kill, 3 air, I don't even know the stats, but I was in the negatives, okay? And it was just absolutely terrible. I had a really good couple serves though. But I literally forgot about that after the game was over because the weekend was just so fun. And I was just so happy to be there. And I knew that I earned my way there, however that happened. And I knew I was going to keep putting in the work when I left. And so like my statistical performance at All-Star, yeah, it would have been cool to like play like an All-Star, but it didn't mean anything because just being there was just a win in itself.
Yeah. Now this season, you all didn't have the season you wanted. And every time in the press, you all still had somewhat of a positive attitude with that. What did you take away from this season, even though the record did not show maybe the talent that you had on this team?
I took away that it needs to be fun. We need to play fun and feel free enough to make the error, knowing that we can make the same decisions and get the point. And there were games where it wasn't fun. And I think I've even said that to you in pressers where it was like, this one was rough. Or I know for sure we had one where I think it was our last home game and I was like, today was really fun. And there were times where it wasn't that fun and I wouldn't be able to say this. And I learned that we have to keep the fun. And for me, I'm not a silly gal most of the time, but a lot of our team this year was silly. And at times they reminded me that that's very important. And so my biggest takeaway is it has to be fun. And however you figure that out and how that works for the group that you have, because every team is going to be different. This team was so different than last year's team, and not just because of the personnel, but because people grow and people evolve, and whatever we need to do next season to keep it fun. And that's to make sure the coaches are having fun too, and everyone that comes in our gym has fun. That's going to guarantee our success. I think we do a good job of making sure the fans have fun. And that's also always a goal of ours. And so we just need to make sure we feel that freedom to mess up, and that freedom to mess up and maybe laugh about it sometimes, or the freedom for you to mess up and laugh and for me to be like, hey, maybe not the time. But it's that good balance. We just need to have fun.
What can we expect from you all next season?
Fun. You can expect, I know that our staff is working really hard to create similar and even better experiences for us. I know they're working really hard to put together another strong roster. And you can expect that we're going to come in and put in the work like we did this year. And we are definitely learning from our mistakes this year. You can expect us to let less tips fall. There at the end of the season, that was kind of a kryptonite of ours.
You guys talk about that a lot, yeah.
I mean, you know. But you can expect us to put in the work. And what another thing I learned this year is, with sports and with a league that's so competitive, there are times that you could do everything right, starting from that Monday leading up to the game, and you will not come out on top. And the playoffs are a good example of that. Our number 1 seed went down for, I think, yet another year in the first round of playoffs. And it says nothing about the kind of people you are, or if you're hard workers, and everything about what my dad always said to me growing up. He always said the ball is round. And you could spin it, and sometimes it bounces and goes on their side, and sometimes it'll bounce and go on their side. Sometimes it's an inch in, and sometimes it's a millimeter out. And that's the beauty of our sport. And that's something that we have to embrace even when it doesn't work in our favor. So we're gonna put in the work, and hopefully you'll see that on the court, but you'll definitely have a good time.
We talked about videography and photography and your love for that. I also saw an article about generative AI and AI in photography. Do you utilize AI? And a lot of people say, oh, it's unethical to use AI in videography and photography. What are your thoughts on that? And how do you use AI?
So that article started with a class that I took. I took a class on AI and the future of communication, which really opened my eyes. And we were tasked with using all these different platforms that do generative AI video and generative AI photo. And again, opened my eyes a lot. And I thought it was cool. But I also did this research in a separate class, an ethics class, both for my master's. I did a research project on, what was it called? It was basically, like appropriation of other people's art.
Yeah.
And the post writing that kind of reflection on what I learned in that course, I've learned just what information generative AI pulls from and how there is a very fine line between using it as a supplement to your hard work and using it instead of your hard work, and then using it mindlessly and stealing other people's work without even knowing. I think AI is great, and I think a lot of people use AI as a personal assistant. I've used AI for meal planning. I've used it to help me reword something. I've used it to kind of better my product in a very genuine and non-plagiarized way. But I do think that there's a fine line. And using AI to write your papers or your recruiting emails is maybe not the best way to use AI. But I think it's such an incredible tool that we have access to. I think the people behind these large AI companies need to be more ethical in how they place their servers and all that stuff with the environmental impacts. But I do think that AI is a very, very amazing tool. We just need to figure out how to create it and maintain it and use it more ethically as a society. But I think it's cool.
You talked about environmental impact. When the hurricane hit Jamaica, I know that you did some efforts with that. Can you share a little bit about what you did to support Jamaica during that time?
Yeah, I didn't do a lot. I did a lot of crying. But I, in my position, realized that the best thing I could do was to just share other people's relief efforts, because I didn't have one myself. I wasn't on the ground and a lot of people were asking me out of, very genuine in consideration, like, what can I do? Where can I give my money? What's something legit? Because there were some scams out there.
Yeah.
And so I kind of did a little bit of research, and just through people that I know who were organizing relief efforts, I just tried to share that on my Instagram. And then I put it on my website also, because there are a couple people that check. I do get those statistics sometimes.
I'd be one of those people.
Yeah, so I really just shared links, and I guess this is a cool opportunity to talk about my wife, who is in veterinary school at The Ohio State, and one of her classmates is also Jamaican. He went to high school in Jamaica, and they organized relief for animals in Jamaica. They got some money. I think they wanted to do supplies. I forget what all they actually ended up getting. But they did a raffle. They raffled off some experiences for the vet students in exchange for monetary donations, and they were able to send that down to a local animal clinic in the West, which is where it was mostly affected by the hurricane. And so she did more than I did, and I won't take credit for that. I'm just Jamaican, so she just happened to be connected. But I just shared some links and kind of connected my wife with my mom, who was able to get some information about maybe what the country needed. And I think what had happened was it was better for them to send money than supplies, because our ports were closed. And so if we could send them money, they could at least figure out how to use it to rebuild and maybe to get out farm food for the farm animals and stuff. But it was, what can we do from so far away?
What you did, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had your wife who did the work that she could do this. And I think a lot of people forget about animals during that time. I remember when the hurricane hit South Georgia, and my parents made sure to get the dogs and things like that, because you see a lot of animals get left behind during that time. So as a dog owner, I am appreciative of your wife and what she did as well.
The thing about Hurricane Melissa is it tore through the west side of Jamaica, and that is our agricultural center. That's the breadbasket of Jamaica, is what we call St. Elizabeth. And so a lot of livestock was lost, a lot of crops were lost, and so that's what took the biggest hit, other than loss of life and property. But cost of living instantly went up because our crops were gone. A lot of farmers had to start from scratch. And so again, not a lot of people thought about the animals or knew the significance of where geographically was affected for us. But we're rebuilding, still rebuilding slowly, but there's life again.
So how can people help? Are there still things that need to be done in Jamaica?
Yeah, I wish I had looked at the link before sitting down, but there is a link that the government organized, and so we know it's legit, where they kind of funnel you, okay, if you want to donate to this or donate to this, and it might still be in my links on my Instagram, but if not, the Prime Minister of Jamaica, Andrew Holness, he has an Instagram account and he has links to everything. And then the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Management, ODPEM, something like that. They also have an Instagram and a website, and I would say that would be a great resource also.